Welcome to the video lecture series, Culture, Worldview, and Origins. We're Tim and Holly Nyquist. This is the fourth part now of the second lecture series on origins. We're looking into the house and constructing a house based on a non-Western cultural tendency way of thinking. And the house that we have up to this point is, we have the 0 point, which is the Weltbild, the cultural tendency and thought patterns, and then that thought pattern choosing a foundational source of knowledge, which in this case is authoritarian knowledge, which is externally, which is revealed knowledge through an open system. And then you've got your 4 rules, basic rules and beliefs, your columns, which then forms a system of thought. Your system of thought then has, your theoretical system has your 3 methods of how to apply or how to get to reliable knowledge from your source, those 3 methods, which were rationalism, empiricism, and skepticism. But in this case, they were not human reason, but it was by God's reasoning processes. It was not through human empiricism because it's limited. It's through God that opens the eyes and be able to see the dimensions that are here. And then skepticism, which is skeptical of outside or other sources, but comparing it and bringing it back to their original source of reliable knowledge. Then what we have on top of those now is a science, a type of thinking pattern is the 3rd floor of what we're applying, which is number 10. What kind of science would this be produced? And really, I've been looking at this, and if our science is a product of our assumptions, our basic beliefs, and our assumed source of reliable knowledge, then what kind of science, if I believed, and I do believe in this system, what kind of science would it produce? Well, what we have is a 3rd floor, science produced, a creation science based on Genesis 1:1. And you might be saying, what is that? Well, you might have heard of creation science, but what I'm gonna propose maybe is a creator science, because if we are basing our science on our basic assumptions, then our basic assumption, which comes out of our bottom floor of our source of knowledge, then we start with revealed revelation or revealed scripture, and we start with the first verse, Genesis 1:1. And what Genesis 1:1 says, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. So our primary assumption based on this verse is God. He exists. And again, a question might come up, well, okay, you say that God exists and then He created. Then who created God? Well, in each system, each house, there has to be something eternal. You have to start with something. And this house starts with God. The other house starts with time, matter, and energy. And those are the eternal components of the extreme Western tendency house. In this house, it's God's eternal. Who created him? No, he wasn't. He is the eternal component. So in other words, I assume first that God exists, then it says God created the heavens and the earth. So what we have is that I don't believe in God because I've studied creation and am convinced that it had to have been created. The assumption, primary assumption, is in the beginning God. You start with God. So I guess I would be a creatorist, beginning with God. He's the creator. And then from the creator, he created the heavens and the earth. So it's kind of maybe a detail, but a lot of times, or myself, I could spend a lot of time studying creation and never get to the creator, never study the creator, because the creation is so vast. It's more than what one person can know. And so if I'm trying to know God just through the creation, then I am starting backwards from what the assumptions are in this model. This model starts with the assumption of God. So that is the first floor, the third floor science is a creation science model. That means there's a creator involved. And we start with the creator and we look at his creation to know him better, but not to prove that he exists, because we assume his existence in the first verse. So on top of that science, then, creator science, creation science, we have two columns that represent the resources available. And so in this house, the resource number one, the first pillar, is the resource number one is God. In the beginning, God. Okay? With him as a resource, that's pretty unlimited as to what you can do. This resource, being God, is eternal. And with the title of being God, he's omnipotent, all-powerful. So in other words, you have an eternal, all-powerful being as the first component, as the first resource. Whereas in the other house, you had matter and energy. And those were your eternal, or time, matter, and energy, your eternal components. Whereas in this one, the eternal component is God. And we go to the reference point, again, is the same, which is in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. God was before. In the beginning of time, God created the heavens and the earth. Some have speculated that, well, in the beginning, that means God existed before the beginning. What they're talking about is time. So God actually created time. He created the heavens, which is space, and he created the earth, which is matter. And then some have gone further and have noted, well, it's interesting is that the one concept of God is the triune God that exists in three persons. Well, then if you go to time, you have time that exists in three phases, the past, the present, and the future. And then you go to space that is occupying space, which is the width and the length and the height. And then you have matter that occupies, or different states of matter, which could be a gas, a liquid, or solid. So we have different dimensions here, or talking about the first pillar is the resource is God. Moving on, the second pillar. What does the second pillar represent? Second pillar represents the resource of what God created. So in other words, the first pillar is God. And the second pillar, resources, are unlimited, basically, because what can a God not create? So what we have here is the physical resources that are now available and time, space, and matter, which again are found in Genesis chapter 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So what we have now is columns of resource number 1, which is God, which is eternal and omnipotent, all-powerful. And then resource number 2, which is the physical resources or the created resources of time, space, and matter. And that is also based on, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. We're getting towards the end of the house. We're getting up there, but you can see how it compares to the previous structure and how really they are a house of beliefs, or based on basic beliefs. And I feel that is why when people want to debate about different standpoints or different models of scientific models between them, it can often degenerate into sarcasm or personal attacks. And I believe the reason for that is that the scientific model that's being proposed, or that I propose, is based on my basic beliefs, my personal beliefs, which are based on my personal source of reliable knowledge. So if somebody wants to attack my scientific model, they're really attacking my belief system. And I don't believe that attacking is the way to enter into dialogue with somebody, but is to look at the different cultures, look at the different assumed sources of reliable knowledge, the basic belief systems, the methods, and enter into a dialogue as to whether or not I or that other person are happy and content with their system, with their basic beliefs. You cannot change my mind at the scientific level, because my science is based on all the undergirding basic assumed beliefs. So if we're going to challenge each other, I don't believe that's very productive. I believe that we can enter in dialogue and then discuss whether or not, do you want to change systems? And if you don't want to change and you're happy with your system, then stay with it. But you must stay within the rules of your system, and not adopting a scientific model that is not congruent or a product of your belief system. And that is what has happened in many areas, is that there's young people that are being convinced by debates that this is true, and they adopt this model as being true, but that model may not correspond with their basic beliefs and their source. And so then, to keep that model alive, they change the understructure to support it, when in fact all the structures are supported by a basic belief system, and we just choose our basic beliefs and then model it out. Welt model, we model it out through our scientific models. Again, thank you for accompanying me in this series, and we're nearing the end of the construction of the non-Western house. And we're going to finish it up soon in the next 2 lectures. So thank you again. We're Tim and Holly Nyquist. If you want to correspond with us, those are the addresses, and hope to see you in the next one. Thank you.